there's actually some cool plays that I want to show you with this Crest build. The Crest build will specifically focus on taking advantage of the Crest power-up, and as you can see on the screen, it will scale up for every card face-up in the G-Zone. This lets us utilize multi-attack to a higher extent outside of relying onto cards such as Skull Dragon and Ghost Ship for beaters to hit numbers, and allowing some plays that were to the point where even Obadiah and Bad Bounty turns are really phenomenal on top of this. Later on, I will show an 8 attack combo with 2 CB with Obadiah, for example, and then of course extend from there with both Bad Bounty and the new Miss Phantasm Nightrose that we got in the deck set. We also focus on the consistency of getting the Crest Giver, so we are playing playsets of Riveting Frange and the Crest Giver itself, and there are other little things that you can do to help with that as well. What's really cool about granblue is that if you don't get the Crest or you don't have the necessary pieces to do Crest type of plays, you can still fall back onto the typical granblue strategy. Check out Dueling Guard's deck boxes, playmats, and binders. The great quality products that are anime based. They continually have more anime options becoming available. Use the affiliated link in the description for a 5% discount on your next purchase. Going into the deck list itself, I'll quickly cover some of the pieces that you would expect anyway to not change. 3 Nightrose G, for example, you definitely want to have this for ban the run place, but also the name and the crest does restrict us to writing only grade 3 Nightroses. In addition to that, we are playing the 4th copy as Nightrose V because we want to still maximize on Bad Bounty turns. I've also tried out Starlight Nightrose as an additional 5th, 6th writable target too. This can also be a target for Bad Bounty worst case scenario situations. It can also be using a rigor type of effect. I actually tried to bring back the Starlight loop, but I realized that it wasn't necessary anymore because now in current days, we actually have access to a card like Beatrice, which kind of does the same purpose that she did to further extend attacks. So ultimately, I actually took out Starlight Nightrose back out and just stuck with the 4 Nightrose. To Beatrice, if you do have the crest, you cannot ride this as Vanguard. You had to be with Nightrose. But that's okay, we can still maximize on Beatrice with Negro Lily plays, but also multi-attack. She's part of our main strategy, so having the 2 copies is still very appreciated. One card that did take a hit was Skull Dragon, so we reduced this to 1. What I realized too, again, with the crest power-up, you're less reliant on cards like Skull Dragon and Ghost Ship, especially since all your other units are going to start stacking out with plus 20, 25, 30k, and so on. That Skull Dragon isn't as important early on, and if you do extenders like Nightstorm and Riveting Frange, you can get away with 1 Skull Dragon too, or you can fall back onto a Ghost Ship, which will also get the power up on top of that, so it's kind of like a mini Skull Dragon, literally. Also, you can't ride this if you're on the crest. Like, this would come up against Mega Colony, Chaos matchups, for example, too. But against, like, Mega Colony, you're already not in a good situation, so it really doesn't matter if you want to ride this or not. It helps, but not... It's already an uphill battle. Nightstorm is still our important attack extender. It's also a hollow unit that we can call with Negrabone G. I will further explain that later on with the combos, too. 1 Sea Strike... With 1 Forbidal, we still rely on the Obadiah package if we need to fall back into this, if we're going second, for example. I've really considered trying different things out, such as like Racing Angel Ladder or just different pieces that we need in the deck just to help facilitate with multiple situations, but there are trade-offs with this deck build. And lastly, with the grade 3 heals for them too, we still need to survive the early game. It's a grade 3 that we can pitch and also reoccur with Sea Strike and Largoth. With the grade 2s, as mentioned, we are maxing them out on Riveting Frange because we just want maximum consistency. The top 5 skill is very important. Worst case scenario, you set this up in your drop zone for later and have an attack extender with a needed booster at that point, which is still pretty good. It also alleviates some of the pressure that we have on Nightstorm too, where Nightstorm is typically our attack extender that we fall back to. So this helps a little bit in those situations too. 3 Column Bar, because again, we only have so much room. So in order to make room for Riveting Frange, a Column Bar had to go. Essentially too, you could use Riveting Frange not only to get your Crest Givers, but you could also search for a Column Bar that way too, or other pieces that you can use later on. 1 Greed Shade, I've actually tried taking this out completely and see if I really did need it, and it turns out you do need it still. There are many times that it just doesn't come up, but there are times when it does come up, you really want him there. So that's why we still play 1 Greed Shade. Ghost Ship, just as important. It's a mini beater, but it also gets power, so it's like a pseudo Skull Dragon, even more so. And you get to be able to draw cards, which you want to continually have that advantage, especially on ban the rum turns. Those turns are a little bit powerful more because you have that extra 5k thanks to the crest as well. And so this will automatically hit 29k every single time with the crest at a minimum at that point. You have Cannoneer to, continually retire stuff, even keeping your opponents in check. Disruptive plays, that's still very important and key to certain matchups. The new addition that we have is King Serpent, so I did take out Jesse. I actually tried using Jesse in certain combo lines that if we can countercharge, we can continue to extend, further taking advantage of the power-up from the crest. However, I found myself being able to continue on with some extending, with attack extending in general. So I figured I'd revisit King Serpent back. It also does a lot of like soul charging and also just countercharge. It overall, it helps the big picture stuff. But I also find out it feels the soul for Beatrice as well. So that way, if you're like looping or chaining attacks with Beatrice, it basically pays for itself. Not to mention with Obadiah plays where you can mill and call full field, this will immediately also refund Obadiah to give you more counterblast for the battle phase going into it. You'll see in the combos how much King Serpent does come up to make these combos happen. But also, like in worst case scenario, this is our countercharger in addition to Grenache and other cards like that. And again, it's not once per turn. We are playing 4 copies of the Crest Giver, want to maximize on that. We mulligan for this. If you're going first, you can also make it so that you don't have a writable grade 1 target, so you G-assist. Just getting this card will get you another card and be able to -1 that instead of -2. And for the rest of the game, you are set up with the crest. So there's little things you could do, and of course, Riveting Franche to help find it too. Will you get this every single game? No. There are going to be games that you do not get this, and I recommend practicing those games so you know how to fall back into the original granblue strategy. To Tommy D. So what's really nice about this Tommy is that if you do have the crest, you can discard this and search for the exact Nightrose that you need. So if you need additional copies of Nightrose G to be able to not only go into Ban the Rum, but you can also have more access to the Miss Phantasm Nightrose, which does require a grade 3 Nightrose to be the cost of Stride, essentially. So this will actually help a lot in that sense. And you can use Greed Shade to get Nightrose. You can use Sea Strike and Largoth to get Nightrose as well. This is just another way to get it sooner. And then also you can search for Nightrose V directly. And then when you come to Banded Rum, you can pay Nightrose V as the grade 3 cost for Banded Rum. And now you have Nightrose V already in the drop zone that way too. And then of course, worst case scenario, it's just a Stride fodder regardless if you do have the crest or not. 2 Negrabone, 1 is V and 1 is G. So with V, we need the main phase revival from time to time. This comes out more in the late games though. And you can also bottom deck itself to help with the deck size a little bit too. But Negrabone G shines a lot more in the crest build. So one of the things from G era, Negrabone was a vital piece to continue with chaining attacks to absurd numbers, but also thanks to the crest now, you're able to just have attackers without boosters hit some really numbers against like defensive triggers that were damage check essentially. So think about like 2 to 3 damage triggers, but you can still hit depending on how much power up of the crest you do have. And then essentially this card 9 times out of 10 will go into Nightstorm. You have situations too that you can worst case scenario go into a Grenache at the end with this because Grenache is a hollow unit anyway. And because of the crest, Grenache could actually just hit on its own too. And then at the end of the turn, you'll just countercharge 2 anyway. So there's little nifty plays you can do. I've also tried Necrolazy. Really disappointed that they shafted the D version of him. He was this close to being really good, just to be another target, not only to attack extend, but also countercharge. But because there's that restriction that it cannot be calling something else during the battle phase, I ultimately did not use Necrolazy at all, regardless of which version that we have. That is a hollow unit, essentially. 1 Sanctitude, of course, is a very good card, of course. 1 Highlight, because you still need it against certain matchups. And you can still use it to your advantage like normal Granblue in this build. So instead of Urzula and Impix, we have Kano. Now, Impix and Urzula play different roles too. I'm aware of that. There's only so much room, and Impix shines the most in the Shiranui matchup. From time to time, it can come against the Mirror, and it also can come against Chaos too. You can find ways to take out certain cards to add Impix back to. So that's something that I am letting you know to be open-minded more about for those particular matchups, essentially. But for Urzula, Urzula just protects the unit in front, which most of the time is good because you have your Night Storms, your Skull Dragons, etc. But Kano takes everything away that chooses. So a lot of the denial disruptive plays is that they choose the attacking unit or another unit on board. This takes it as much as you can. And so you can put this behind your Vanguard. And so cards like Negrabone G and your other boosters can just boost freely in that sense too. Not only that, you're protecting the boosters because since we do have Negrabone G now, cards like Gahorokan from Nubatama can dominate your Negrabone G from the back row and take it away, and that just hurts. Also, you got like Tricky Assistant and Cannoneer to get rid of it because they can choose any rearguard essentially too. The one thing that does not get around is Gruesome Scythe Dragon when Harry is also getting crest support, and that card chooses a whole column and then boom, everything gone. So be mindful of that. I just want to throw that out there too. So Kano is just helpful in those situations, and I just put it behind the Vanguard and just call it a day essentially. For the grade zeros, our starter is Grenache V. The name actually matters. So if you want the crest, you need Grenache. match as your Vanguard. Regardless of which version, this one is the most beneficial because you get the extra draw and ticket. And then of course his brother from the past is Grenache G, and he's in your main deck. He is still our main counter charger, just like I said with King Serpent, but this is our bad boy at the end of the turn to countercharge 2. And since we are Nightrose, you can JB2 to countercharge another 2 for a total of 4. Little plays like that, you could even search it on Negro Lily plays with Columbard, get it from deck, countercharge 2, refund your cost. Like a lot of interactions, this card is super important for granblue just to function. With the crits, we are playing 3 chats for Stride Fodder still for moving forward. A Rampage Shade crits, because again, we are on a Nightrose name, and 2 Rough Seas. So Rough Seas is that main phase Soul Charge is so important. If you're going first too, you can use Riveting Frange to grab this if you do miss the Crest Giver and you do not ride grade 1 just yet. Since it is a grade 0, you can call it and then put it into Salt and draw a card, so you have another card deeper to potentially draw into the Crest Giver. If not, in your next draw or next potential Riveting Frange, if you draw into one, it's 1 card deeper in a sense too. But I just wanted to have a card available to that. Also, if you're going second against matchups like Raging Form, for example, and if you have to do the damage denial route, essentially, you can Columbard into Rough Seas, draw a card, and then just pass, assuming they don't have any rearguards, so that way you don't miss out on your drive checks plus, essentially. So those little things like that. And with the next Rampage is the 30k Sentinel. So you may have noticed that there's no Water Spout Jinx. Again, to make room for the Crest Giver and also other stuff, you really need to have room in the grade 1s, essentially. So that's why Sentinels are now back into the triggers in this case, in this build. And of course, with 2 draw PGs, you're not aggressively milling, but you can be soul charging your deck. And of course, if the game goes too long, you may hit this and it may deck you out. This isn't anything new, it's just account for it and practice with it. You could also like get it out with Obadiah if it's really that bad, but just be mindful of that in that sense too. And the OT obviously is whatever you want to pick. I'm still playing the stoicheia one. I may experiment with the purple one as well, just like in Overdress, for example, especially if you don't want that additional draw. You could at least heal a damage still, because granblue can have pieces that go into the damage and it hurts. So being able to heal pieces is still important. So I would recommend this one or the purple OT. Now I'll go really quickly with the strides too. Harmonics, you need it in premium. To ban the rump, you're still doing those plays. And to Obadiah, these are phenomenal actually right now. I will show a play that this turn becomes a lot more stronger too, especially if you do ban the rump first, you G-guard, you have a crest power of potentially 15, 20, 25, depending on what you have. And you can do 8 attacks with 2 counterblasts. And if you have more counterblasts, you could extend even more so at that point too. So thankfully Obadiah is a lot stronger in this build. The alternative play is still Bad Bounty 2, especially if you have Nightrose V available to you. Again, be mindful that you can only ride Nightrose cards that are grade 3, even from the superior ride from this too. That's still limiting. That's the one con about this, but it isn't as bad. Plus, you want Nightrose V anyway, because the combo with her with self-retire is actually pretty bunkers, which I will also show. And with 2 CB, you can do 10 attacks. You have 1 Bartholomew because Bartholomew ends game still. It only gets worse with the crest, so everything hits really high numbers and your opponent has to guard 3 or more from hand, or they just take a damage to the face. If it comes up at that point too. And then the new addition, we took out the 3rd Bad Bounty for Miss Phantasm. So I will show off a combo that you can do 12 attacks with 2 CB with this. But essentially, there's a situation where Bad Bounty may not be the best play because you don't have the right pieces like Nightrose V, for example. Maybe it was damaged. Maybe it's stuck in zone. You can get it out for whatever reason. And also, if you're not at the 30 count just yet with Bartholomew, this is a good alternative. And so if you have a grade 3 Nightrose in your hand, you can go into this as another option. In standard, it also is our best stride technically in the standard format Nightrose, but there's still utility with this. And what's really cool is that it may not have the self-retire from Nightrose V. It retires 2 rearguards still for its cost. And so you can reuse those rearguards in a sense too, assuming they were grade 2 or greater rearguards, which I'll highlight too as well. Plus it gets the additional crit. That's actually pretty nice because you can multi-attack and have Vanguard pressure, which forces the opponent to now guard your Vanguard with a G-guard or a PG. And because you have the crest power up and you have G-guards in this format, this is going to be hitting even higher and bigger than normally in standard it would. So now the rest of the rearguards that you have can hit harder. And then if you attack extend after that anyway, which we can in premium format, your opponent's in a situation where they can't guard everything at that point. Lastly, 2 Negro Lily, 2 Negro Nora, and 2 Oriana. That hasn't really changed much. And let's get into the combos. So after going into Ban the Rum, G-guarding with Negro Nora, and then going into Obadiah, you can have 5 face up in the G-zone to get 25k for the rest of your turn, thanks to the crest. Key pieces that you definitely need are Nightstorm, King Serpent, Beatrice, and Negrabone G. These are some optional ones included as well, so that way you can countercharge, you have a beater, and then Kano can also protect you against a disruptive play. Using Obadiah's skill, you get all the pieces. Superior call this type of field. Again, these 3 are your starting pieces that you need. These are extra. King Serpent will immediately soul charge and counter charge, refunding back Obadiah. Hollow, of course. And remember, each attack gets an additional 25k as well. And Obadiah gives 5k to each of these as well. So 13 plus 25 is 38. Nightstorm, 16 plus 25, 41k. Skill, Counterblast 1. Revive Beatrice over King Serpent. Beatrice triggers, calling the King Serpent over Nightstorm. Soul charge and counter charge again. Remember, not once per turn. King Serpent will be 8 plus 25 for 33. Then boosted Beatrice with this. 37 plus 12, 49. Then skill, Counterblast 1. Retire. Call Nightstorm here. Nightstorm will attack. 11 plus 25 for 36 now. Skill over King Serpent. Beatrice skill. Soul Blast 1. Revive a beater. Then this would be the weakest. Vanguard boosted. Any triggers onto the remainders that can still attack. 8 attacks. Alternatively, you can go into Bad Bounty as well. You'll have plus 20k to the crest. Coming from this follow-up, first attack can be Vanguard with Bad Bounty. 28 plus 20, 48. Skill. Counterblast 1, discard 3. This will go face up. Ride Nightrose V. You get a protect marker. The crest will go up. And then everything additionally will get 5k. So we'll just say an additional 10. At least for the rearguards. You can have any unit attack next. This will retire because of Nightrose. Nightstorm. Bring back Beatrice. Soul Blast 1. Bring back King Serpent. Soul Charge and Counter Charge. King Serpent will be 38. Self-retire. Beatrice will be 42. Self-retire. Nightrose. You can boost if you want, or if you have the counter, you could just keep it just to get around Disruptive Place. Skill. Bring Beatrice and King Serpent in the same column. King Serpent first. Counter Charge. Then Beatrice. Bring Nightstorm here. Vanguard's 22 plus 25, technically. So 48. Twin Drive, stack any triggers. Next is Beatrice. Self-retire. Nightstorm. This is 41. Counterblast 1 at the end. Beatrice once more. Soul Blast. Revive a beater. And then Beatrice. And then Skull Dragon. 10 attacks. The other option is Miss Phantasm Nightrose. Same situation with the follow-up. So plus 20k to the front row. This is your field setup going into your battle phase. Negative G is key for this one. So first is your beater or X unit. Nightstorm second. This is 31. Skill. Get Beatrice. Soul Blast 1. Get King Serpent. Soul Charge 1. Counter Charge 1. Then King Serpent is 28. This will be 32. Nightrose boosted. Skill on attack. Counter Blast 1. Retire to rearguards. These two front runs. Call Nightstorm and King Serpent. They're both greater and greater in different names. King Serpent. Soul Charge 1. Counter Charge. They also get 10k. Triple drive with crit. Assuming you're 10 or 15 more, obviously. Actually, we'll do it this way, actually. King Serpent, 38. Nightstorm, 41. Scale, Counter Blast 1. Culver with Beatrice. Beatrice, Soul Blast 1. Culver with King Serpent. Scale, Soul Charge 1 again. And Counter Charge. Beatrice for 32. King Serpent boosted, 15 plus 20, 35. Negative Scale, Counter Blast 1. Retire. Call a hollow unit. Call it over Beatrice. This is key. Nightstorm for 31. Skill, Counter Blast 1. Call Beatrice. Skill, Soul Blast 1. Call a beater like Skull Dragon. Beatrice for 32. And then lastly, the beater, Skull Dragon. 12 attacks. And that's the deck profile, amigos. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope those combos kind of open your eyes a little bit for the possibilities. There are some glaring weaknesses, as I mentioned. There's, the usage of Kano that we need to protect our rearguards because we are susceptible to Disruptive Place. We rely on sequencing of Nightstorm and Negro Bone G, for example, so that's very important. Obviously, the biggest kicker is Hanali, and so I've not forgotten that. And just like with any high multi-attack deck, Hanali is still the hard limiter, essentially, too. So depending on the matchup, it can be not as beneficial to have more attacks, but you can still play the 4 to 5, maybe 6 attack game normally as you do with granblue, with the benefit of having just bigger numbers with the crest too. I recommend practicing against Hanali and those matchups too, for example, too, so you have a better feel for this too. If you do not like the crest build, you can play normal Nightrose still. That is still a very good deck. It's very solid. I would say that's probably more consistent in what it wants to do because it doesn't have to rely on writing a specific grade 1 on turn 1, for example, every single game, right? You can also play one copy of the Crest Giver in current Nightrose, and if you do see it, it's almost kind of like a high roll type of deal. And then up to you if you want to change different ratios of all the cards, if that does come up or not, or if it's just the power gain at that point. I think the Nightrose D though is a good addition just with any granblue variant, because that could come up, and it also has the Nightrose name. So if you are playing any like Rampage crits, for example, or if you do play like other Nightrose support too, that depends on the name, you can use that as well. But again, you need Nightrose grade 3s to be able to pay the cost to stride into this to begin with as well. So you may be asking yourself which one's better. And so to me, I feel like if I were to take it to a regional, I'll probably feel more comfortable with current Nightrose. This just came out with the support, so it's been like a week, right? And so with more play testing, I think we have a better educated guess. That's how I feel currently. And then who knows, more cards will come out by the time this comes out too, which can change a variety of factors. But I do expect this to be a variant of granblue style. So I would not be surprised if I'm playing at a regional next year and somebody is playing Crest Rose, essentially. So I recommend at least practicing against it and also see what you're going in yourself into. And decks like this and Harry Crest make you appreciate Honolly even more as a best amigo. Let me know in the comments your thoughts, suggestions too. There might be some other interactions that I don't know too. I'm happy to have a discussion in the comments so that way everybody else can see that as well. And again, if you want to support the channel, use the affiliate links such as like TCG Player, Trading Card Mint, 50 Card Shop, Card Trader Zero, and of course, increase your anime swag with Dueling Guards, Playmats, binders, sleeves, and deck boxes. On to the next one, amigos.